I'm Pamela, 67 years old and a retired school teacher. For 30 years, I cherished my lakeside villa filled with memories of raising my daughter Audrey as a single mother after my husband passed. The relationship with my only child was everything to me until that fateful day when Audrey coldly announced she was taking my home for her husband's family. The betrayal in her eyes as she said those words shattered my heart completely. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from. I could use some friendly voices after what my own flesh and blood put me through. Life hasn't always been easy for me. I was widowed at 42 when my beloved husband Thomas suffered a sudden heart attack while mowing our lawn one summer afternoon. One minute we were planning our weekend barbecue, the next I was planning his funeral. Our daughter Audrey was just 16 at the time, right at that difficult age when a girl needs both parents. Thomas left us with some savings, but not nearly enough to maintain our lifestyle and secure Audrey's future. The villa itself was actually built with inheritance money from Thomas's parents. They had been saving their entire lives and left a generous sum that allowed us to build our dream home on Lake Windermere. Over the decades, we expanded it from a modest 3-bedroom to a spacious 4-bedroom lakefront property with a private dock, beautiful gardens, and a sunroom that captured the morning light perfectly. Every corner of that house held precious memories of our family life. After Thomas died, I was determined that Audrey wouldn't suffer financially because of our loss. I took on 2 jobs, teaching 4th grade at Pinewood Elementary during the day, then doing bookkeeping for local businesses in the evenings. Many nights I'd be up until midnight balancing accounts, then grading papers until 2 in the morning, only to wake up at 6 to prepare breakfast for Audrey before school. Despite the exhaustion, I never complained. Keeping the villa was important to me because it was the last connection Audrey had to her father. The lakeside property where she learned to swim, where Thomas taught her to fish, where we celebrated every birthday and holiday as a family. I couldn't bear to sell it, even when financial advisors suggested it would be the sensible thing to do. Audrey and I were very close after her father's death, or so I believed. Looking back, I can see signs of entitlement that I missed at the time. She expected expensive clothes when her friends got them. She assumed we could afford lavish Sweet 16 and prom expenses without discussion. But I chalked it up to grief and teenage adjustment. I wanted to give her everything Thomas would have wanted for her. I made sure Audrey had every advantage I could provide. While I wore the same winter coat for 12 years, she attended the prestigious Lakeside Academy where tuition was more than my teaching salary. She took piano lessons, horseback riding, and tennis, all expensive activities that I funded by picking up extra tutoring work during summers when most teachers were enjoying their break. When Audrey wanted to study in Europe for a semester in high school, I refinanced the villa to make it happen. When she needed a car to drive to her part-time job at the mall, though, most of her earnings went to clothes and socializing, I gave up the idea of finally replacing our aging heating system. College was another massive expense. Audrey was accepted to Westfield University, an elite private college known for its business program. The tuition was astronomical, but she had her heart set on it. I took out a second mortgage on the villa, putting my retirement at risk. When she called home complaining about her tiny dorm room and wanting an off-campus apartment instead, I dipped into what little emergency savings I had left. Through it all, I felt nothing but pride in Audrey's accomplishments. Yes, we were growing apart. Her calls became less frequent, her visits home shorter, and often accompanied by comments about how dated the villa looked compared to her friends' parents' homes. But I told myself this was natural. She was building her own life. I had done my job. Then Audrey met Jackson Harrington during her senior year of college. He came from old money, or so he claimed. His family owned property in 3 states and had connections to several prominent businesses. The first time she brought him home, he was charming, complimenting the rustic charm of the villa in a way that somehow felt condescending rather than genuine. Jackson had a way of discussing his family's wealth that seemed calculated to make others feel inferior. He'd casually mention their summer house in the Hamptons or the yacht his father had recently purchased, but there were subtle contradictions that made me wonder. The watch he wore was impressive from a distance, but a knockoff upon closer inspection. The business calls he took often seemed staged. By the time Audrey graduated and they got engaged, I had considerable reservations about Jackson, but Audrey was so enamored seeing only the lifestyle he represented rather than the man himself. They married in an extravagant ceremony that his parents supposedly paid for, though I later discovered Audrey had maxed out 3 credit cards to cover costs they hadn't. All this time, I continued working well beyond when I should have retired. My knees ached from standing in classrooms for decades, my eyes strained from late-night bookkeeping. But I finally set a retirement date for my 65th birthday, looking forward to enjoying my golden years in the villa I had sacrificed so much to keep. I planned to tend my garden, join the local book club, maybe even date again after 25 years of focusing solely on being Audrey's mother. Little did I know that my retirement plans were about to collide with schemes already in motion, schemes centered around the very home I had fought so hard to keep. My 65th birthday should have been a joyful milestone. After decades of hard work and sacrifice, I was finally retiring. I'd planned a small dinner at my favorite local restaurant, the Lakeview Bistro, and was looking forward to celebrating with Audrey and Jackson, along with a few close friends who'd supported me through the years. Audrey and Jackson arrived 45 minutes late. I'd already ordered appetizers for the table and was making awkward conversation with my guests who kept checking their watches. When they finally swept in, there was something off about their demeanor. Audrey barely hugged me, and Jackson seemed unusually interested in the restaurant's lakeside location, commenting on property values in the area, rather than wishing me a happy birthday. "Mom, you look great," Audrey said, though her eyes were focused on her phone. 65 is the new 50, right? Have you thought about what you're going to do with all that free time? Before I could answer, Jackson jumped in. "Speaking of retirement, Pamela, your villa must be worth quite a bit now. Lakefront property has skyrocketed in value. What's your tax situation like? Have you considered how property taxes eat into fixed incomes?" I was taken aback by his forwardness. "Well, I've managed the taxes for 30 years, Jackson. I've budgeted for retirement quite carefully." "But it's such a large place for just one person," Audrey interjected. "4 bedrooms. All that maintenance. Wouldn't you prefer something more manageable now that you're getting older?" The conversation felt rehearsed, as if they'd discussed this before arriving. My friend Margaret, who'd been my teaching colleague for 20 years, shot me a concerned look across the table. "I love my home," I said firmly. "It keeps me active and I enjoy the space when you two visit." I tried to change the subject, but throughout dinner, Jackson kept steering the conversation back to the villa, the lakefront, and what he called sensible retirement planning. I brushed off my concerns that evening, telling myself they were just showing interest in my welfare. But over the next few months, a pattern emerged that was impossible to ignore. Audrey and Jackson began visiting more frequently, which initially delighted me. But their behavior during these visits was strange. Jackson would wander off during conversations, measuring rooms with a small tape measure he carried in his pocket. I caught him examining the foundation and taking photos of the electrical panel in the basement. "Just curious about these older constructions," he explained when I questioned him. "My father is thinking about a similar project." Audrey, meanwhile, became increasingly critical of how I maintained the house. "Mom, this guttering needs replacing," or "the deck could really use refinishing, so," or "this kitchen is so outdated." Each comment felt less like helpful advice and more like criticisms of my home. Then came the phone call I wasn't meant to overhear. I was gardening outside the sunroom window when Audrey stepped inside to take a call, not realizing I could hear every word. "Yes, Dad, we're at Mom's place now," she was saying to Jackson's father. "No, she hasn't brought up selling yet, but we're working on it." "Yes, the lakefront access is perfect for your boats." "No, I don't think she suspects anything. Jackson's been checking for any major issues. Don't worry, we'll make it happen before winter." My hands froze in the soil. Make what happen? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. During our next family dinner, I noticed how the conversation between Audrey Jackson and his parents, Gerald and Diana, seemed to include subtle exchanges and knowing looks whenever the villa was mentioned. Gerald asked pointed questions about the property lines and water rights. Diana commented on how she'd always dreamed of retiring by a lake. When I tried to confront Audrey afterward, she dismissed my concerns entirely. "Mom, you're being paranoid. We're just worried about you rattling around in this big house alone. It's not safe at your age." "At my age," I repeated, stunned. "I'm 65, not 95. I'm in perfect health." "That's what everyone thinks until they fall down the stairs or slip in the shower," she replied with a patronizing tone I'd never heard from her before. "Jackson and I are just looking out for your best interests." My friend Margaret didn't buy it for a second when I told her about these interactions. "Pamela, you need to protect yourself," she warned over coffee one morning. I've seen this before with my own sister. Her son convinced her to put his name on her house just in case, and within a year he'd forced her to move to assisted living and sold her home. I didn't want to believe Audrey could be capable of such calculation, but the evidence was mounting. I started finding brochures or assesses for retirement communities accidentally left on my kitchen counter after their visits. One was even helpfully bookmarked at the page for affordable single rooms. The final straw of this initial phase came when I discovered Audrey had been telling our family friends that I was becoming confused and having trouble keeping up with the house. Mrs. Peterson, who I'd known for 20 years, called to ask if I needed help remembering to take my medications. I don't take any medications. Audrey was deliberately undermining my reputation as a competent adult, and the realization broke something inside me. That night, I sat alone in my sunroom watching the moonlight on the lake, feeling the first real stirrings of fear about what my own daughter might be planning. Thanksgiving should be about gratitude and family togetherness, but that year's holiday gathering at my villa marked a turning point in my understanding of the threat I was facing. Jackson's parents, Gerald and Diana Harrington, arrived with 4 suitcases for a 3-day stay, as if they were moving in rather than visiting. From the moment they entered my home, their attitude conveyed ownership rather than gratitude. Diana ran her finger along my mantelpiece, checking for dust, while Gerald immediately began commenting on structural improvements that could be made. "This wall between the kitchen and dining room," he announced during the appetizers, non-load bearing, "could open the whole space up. Make it more modern." Gerald has such a vision for properties, Diana added, patting my hand condescendingly. He transformed our Aspen condo from a dated disaster to a showplace. He could work wonders with this quaint little place. I bristled at the description of my beloved home as quaint. The villa was over 3,000 square feet with waterfront access, hardly a cottage. But I bit my tongue for Audrey's sake, not wanting to create tension during the holiday. That restraint became nearly impossible later that evening, when I overheard Gerald, Diana, and Jackson in the guest bedroom thinking I was occupied in the kitchen. "The master suite would be perfect for us," Diana was saying. "We could expand the bathroom by taking space from that unnecessary linen closet." "Dad's already talked to his contractor friend about the renovations," Jackson replied. "Once we get the old lady settled elsewhere, we can start right away. Should be move-in ready by spring." "And Audrey's on board?" Gerald asked. "No sentimentality about her childhood home." Jackson laughed. "Are you kidding? She can't wait to upgrade. She's been embarrassed by this dated place for years, calls it Mom's Museum." Their laughter felt like physical blows. My own daughter was embarrassed by the home I'd sacrificed everything to maintain for her. The home where she'd grown up, where her father had lived. The home I'd nearly killed myself working multiple jobs to keep. Over the next few months, Audrey became increasingly secretive. She'd take phone calls in the garden, abruptly ending conversations when I approached. She made excuses to access my home office where I kept financial documents. After one such visit, I found my filing cabinet slightly askew, the folder containing property documents out of order. My suspicions reached a breaking point when I found architectural drawings tucked into the guest room bedside table after Audrey and Jackson stayed over. They'd forgotten them in their haste to leave. The plans showed my villa completely gutted and redesigned with Master Suite G&D marked where my bedroom currently stood and a notation for boat lift installation at my dock. When I called Audrey to ask about the drawings, her response chilled me. "Mom, you're obviously confused again. Those must be for someone else's renovation. Stop going through our things when we visit. It's getting weird." "Audrey, they had our address on them." "No, they didn't. Jackson's parents are looking at a property on the same lake, that's all. You must have misread it. Remember last month when you thought the mail carrier was stealing your magazines? You're starting to worry us." I had never accused any mail carrier of theft. This was a complete fabrication, but said with such conviction that for a moment I actually questioned my own memory. This gaslighting technique became Audrey's go-to response whenever I raised concerns. The isolation grew worse. Several friends stopped calling after Audrey had confidential conversations with them about my condition. My invitations to community events became fewer. Even my sister Judith, who lived in Arizona, called more frequently, asking strange questions about whether I was managing okay on my own. When Judith finally visited during spring break, she was shocked by the disconnect between Audrey's descriptions of me and reality. She arrived expecting to find me confused and frail, possibly with a house falling into disrepair. Instead, she found me perfectly lucid, the house immaculate, and my garden the envy of the neighborhood. Pamela, something's not right, Judith said after witnessing an interaction between me, Audrey, and Jackson, where they discussed the villa as if I wasn't present. They talked about when the renovation starts right in front of you as if it's already decided. The health toll of this constant stress was becoming impossible to ignore. I developed insomnia lying awake, worrying about becoming homeless. My blood pressure, always perfect before, was suddenly concerning enough for my doctor to prescribe medication. I lost 12 pounds without trying, my appetite diminished by constant anxiety. Things escalated further when I discovered evidence that Audrey had accessed my online banking portal. The login showed activity during hours I was at a dental appointment. Nothing was missing, but several account statements had been viewed and downloaded. Most disturbing of all was a dinner where Jackson's parents openly discussed their retirement plans centered around a lakeside property with good fishing, while exchanging meaningful glances. When I directly asked if they were planning to buy in my neighborhood, Diana laughed airily. "Oh, we don't need to buy, Pamela. We have family who take care of us. That's the advantage of investing in your children, rather than just a house." The implication was unmistakable, and I felt sick to my stomach. The final revelation came when I was searching for my reading glasses and checked the desk in my rarely used formal living room. There I found a folder containing copies of legal documents with my signature. Documents I had no recollection of signing. Looking closer, I realized they were property transfer paperwork, but the signatures didn't look quite right. I'd apparently signed these documents for tax purposes, according to the sticky note in Audrey's handwriting. I remembered now, several months ago, Audrey had brought papers for me to sign during a hectic morning when I was late for a doctor's appointment. "Just routine updates to your will and power of attorney, Mom. The lawyer said it's important to keep these current. Sign here, here, and here. Don't worry about reading all the fine print. It's standard language." Trusting my daughter, I had signed without proper review. Now I wondered if those signatures had somehow been transferred to these property documents, or if these were what I had actually signed under false pretenses. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in my life, genuinely afraid of what my daughter and her husband might be planning next. Sunday afternoons had always been peaceful at the villa. I'd typically spend them reading on the deck, watching boats drift across the lake, maybe calling an old friend. But this particular Sunday would forever be etched in my memory as the day my world shattered completely. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. When I opened it, I found not just Audrey and Jackson, but his parents, Gerald and Diana, as well, all dressed as if attending a business meeting rather than a family visit. The forced smiles and tense posture immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. "Mom, we need to talk," Audrey said, not waiting for an invitation before entering my home. The others filed in behind her, Gerald already removing his suit jacket as if planning to stay. They arranged themselves in my living room like a tribunal, with me standing awkwardly by the fireplace. Family photos surrounded us. Audrey's graduation, her wedding day, Thomas holding her as a baby. The happy memories made what came next all the more painful. "Mom, we need to tell you about the arrangements we've made." Audrey began, her voice unnaturally formal. "As you know, you're getting older and this house is simply too much for someone in your position." "My position?" I echoed, genuinely confused. "Your age, Mom, your situation. Living alone isn't safe anymore." Jackson cleared his throat. "Pamela, we have the documents right here showing that you've gifted the villa to Audrey, who has in turn arranged for her in-laws to take ownership." My heart nearly stopped. "What? I never gave away my home? This is preposterous." Diana leaned forward with a patronizing smile. "Pamela, dear, the paperwork is all here. You signed everything months ago. Don't you remember it's completely legal?" Gerald didn't even attempt such niceties. "The point is, this property belongs to us now. We'll be moving in next month after the initial renovations." I looked to Audrey, waiting for her to correct this absurdity. Instead, she delivered the blow that nearly brought me to my knees. "This is theirs now," she stated flatly. "You're not allowed to come back once you leave." The room spun around me, not allowed back to my own home, the home where I'd raised her, where we'd scattered some of Thomas's ashes in the garden because he'd loved it so much. There must be some mistake. I whispered, my voice failing me. Audrey, I never agreed to give away my home. I've made no such arrangements. The documents say otherwise, Mom. She slid a folder across the coffee table. Your signature is right there. The transfer is complete. I picked up the papers with trembling hands. There was indeed a signature that resembled mine, but I knew with absolute certainty I had never knowingly signed away my home. This isn't right, I said, stronger now as shock gave way to anger. I never agreed to this. Whatever I signed, you misrepresented it. This is fraud. Gerald scoffed. Fraud. Be careful making accusations, Pamela. At your age, such confusion could be seen as cognitive decline. Perhaps we should be discussing power of attorney as well. The threat was unmistakable. They were not only taking my home, but suggesting they could take control of my life if I fought back. While I was still reeling, Diana stood up and began walking around the living room, discussing changes as if I were already gone. The wall sconces will have to go, of course. And this carpet? Heavens, it's at least 20 years old. We'll need hardwood throughout. The kitchen will require a complete gutting. I couldn't believe she was planning renovations right in front of me. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Where exactly am I supposed to go? I managed to ask, fighting back tears. Audrey pulled out several glossy brochures and placed them on the table. We've researched some excellent assisted living facilities. Sunny Pines has an opening next month. It's small, but they provide 3 meals a day and have weekly bingo. I glanced at the brochure. Sunny Pines was a budget facility on the outskirts of town known for its minimal care and shared rooms. Nothing like the independent life I'd planned for my retirement. I don't need assisted living, I protested. I'm perfectly capable of caring for myself. My doctor just gave me a clean bill of health last month. That's what you say, Mom. But we've all noticed the signs. Audrey countered. The confusion. The forgetfulness. Remember when you couldn't find your car keys and accused the cleaning lady of moving them? That had happened once years ago and had been a simple misunderstanding, not a sign of mental decline. But Audrey was painting a picture of an incompetent elderly woman who couldn't be trusted to make her own decisions. After everything we've done for you, this is how you thank us, Audrey suddenly burst out when I continued to protest. The sheer audacity of this statement left me speechless. After everything they had done for me, when I had given up everything to provide for her, Jackson added the final blow. You need to start packing your personal items immediately. We'll allow you to take your clothing and personal mementos, but the furniture stays with the house. As this cruel discussion continued, Gerald and Diana actually began measuring the windows for new drapes, discussing fabric options while I stood there, still trying to comprehend how my only child could betray me so completely. Tears streamed down my face, but they were met with impatient sighs rather than compassion. My emotional distress was clearly an inconvenience to their renovation schedule. Mom, please don't make this difficult, Audrey said, not meeting my eyes. It's already decided. You have 30 days to vacate, but we'd prefer if you could be out sooner so the contractors can start work. In that moment, looking at the daughter I had sacrificed everything for, I felt something break inside me. Not just my heart, but my entire understanding of our relationship. The child I had raised, loved unconditionally, and put before my own needs for decades, was now treating me as an obstacle to be removed, a complication in her plans to provide her in-laws with a lakefront retirement property. The pain was beyond anything I could have imagined. Worse than losing Thomas, worse than any physical ailment. This was a betrayal so profound it shook the foundation of my identity as a mother. As they continued discussing my removal from my own home, I stood silent, tears falling, wondering how I would survive this ultimate betrayal. In that devastating moment with my daughter and her husband's family discussing my home as if I were already gone, I made a split-second decision that would ultimately save me. I wiped away my tears, straightened my shoulders, and did something completely unexpected. I smiled and nodded. I understand, I said quietly. If that's how it has to be. The sudden capitulation clearly surprised them. Audrey and Jackson exchanged confused glances, clearly having prepared for more resistance. Well, good, Audrey stammered. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Mom. I'll need some time to sort through my things, I added, keeping my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Decades of memories, you know. Gerald checked his watch impatiently. Just don't take too long. Our contractor needs to start work by the 15th. They left shortly after, satisfied they'd achieved their goal without a messy scene. Jackson's parents were already discussing paint colors as they walked to their car. The moment they drove away, I collapsed onto my couch and broke down completely. Great heaving sobs tore through my body as the full weight of the betrayal crashed over me. How could my own daughter do this to me? What had I done to deserve such cruelty? The questions swirled as I cried until no more tears would come. Around midnight, with hands still shaking, I called the one person I knew would help, my sister Judith. Despite the late hour and the 3-hour time difference in Arizona, she answered immediately. Pamela, what's wrong? Her voice, so similar to my own, was a lifeline in the darkness. Through broken sobs, I explained what had happened. Judith's outrage was immediate and fierce. Those conniving little... I'm booking a flight right now, she declared. But first you need legal help tonight. My neighbor's son is an attorney who specializes in elder law. Let me call him. Within an hour, I was on the phone with Frank Daniels, an attorney based in my state who specialized in cases exactly like mine. His calm, authoritative manner was immediately reassuring. Mrs. Campbell, based on what you're describing, there are several serious legal issues here, potentially including fraud, misrepresentation, and elder abuse. Do not sign anything else. Do not agree to move out. Do not discuss the matter further with your daughter or her husband's family. I'll be in your town tomorrow morning and we'll go over everything. True to his word, Frank arrived at my villa by 9 the next morning. A distinguished man in his 50s with kind eyes and a determined set to his jaw, he spent hours reviewing every document I could find related to the property. These supposed gift deed documents, he said, holding the papers up to the light, are problematic in several ways. First, the signature doesn't quite match your other legal documents. Second, there's no record of a notary being present, which would be required for a property transfer of this magnitude. Third, and perhaps most importantly, a unilateral property transfer of this nature would trigger significant gift tax consequences that there's no evidence of you having paid. Hope flickered within me for the first time. So it's not legal. Based on what I'm seeing, no. But we need to move quickly. They may try to file these documents with the county recorder's office. We need to place a legal hold preventing any transactions related to this property. Over the next few days, as Judith arrived to provide moral support, Frank's investigation uncovered disturbing evidence. The signatures on several documents appeared to have been forged or transferred from other paperwork I had legitimately signed. There was evidence of bank account access I had never authorized. Frank also introduced me to another ally, my old acquaintance, Judge Martha Wilson. Martha and I had served on the school board together years ago before she was appointed to the bench. Though she couldn't directly involve herself in any potential legal case, she provided valuable guidance on protecting my assets. Pamela, what you're describing is unfortunately common, Martha told me over coffee at her home away from prying eyes. But you have advantages many victims don't. You're well educated, you have documentation, and frankly, you're still sharp as a tack. We're going to make sure you keep your home. Following their advice, I developed a careful strategy. Publicly, I would appear to go along with Audrey and Jackson's plans, even starting to pack boxes and discuss moving dates. Privately, I was building a case and setting a trap. Frank suggested installing security cameras throughout the villa, overtly at the entrances for general security, but also small hidden cameras in the main living areas. If they come back and discuss their plans openly in your home, that evidence could be crucial, he explained. The cameras proved invaluable when Audrey and Jackson returned the following weekend, believing I had accepted their scheme. Their conversation in my living room, captured with crystal clarity, was damning. I still can't believe she gave in so easily, Jackson said, lounging on my sofa with his feet on my coffee table. I was ready for weeks of emotional manipulation. Audrey shrugged. She's always been a pushover. Remember how easily I got her to pay for that semester abroad? Or my apartment in college? She'd rather give me whatever I want than risk me being upset with her. Well, your pushover mother just solved my parents' retirement and our debt problems in one go. Once they sell their current place and move here, they'll clear enough cash to wipe out what we owe on the casino disaster. This casual reference to the casino disaster led me to another discovery. Through discreet inquiries and an accidental encounter with Gerald's golf partner at the country club, I learned that Jackson had convinced his parents to invest in a failed casino development that had cost them nearly half their retirement savings. The villa wasn't just a nice lakefront property to them, it was financial salvation. Further investigation by Frank revealed Jackson had accumulated significant gambling debts of his own, along with a string of failed business ventures funded by his increasingly cash-strapped parents. The villa represented not just a home, but a valuable asset they could potentially leverage or sell. Meanwhile, I visited my bank manager, Maria Gonzalez, who confirmed attempts had been made to access my accounts using my online credentials from unfamiliar devices. "We flagged it as suspicious activity," Maria explained, "especially since the attempts came from out of state where Jackson's parents live." Armed with mounting evidence, Frank prepared legal countermeasures, an injunction preventing any property transfer, a formal complaint alleging attempted fraud, and documentation of what appeared to be a pattern of elder abuse. But the attorney suggested we wait to file. If we move too soon, they'll have time to cover their tracks. Let them believe they've won. Let them commit to their plan fully. When they arrive to claim the villa, we'll be ready. It wasn't easy maintaining the pretense. Every interaction with Audrey was painful, knowing how she truly saw me, not as the mother who had sacrificed everything for her, but as a resource to be exploited. Each time she called to check on my packing progress, or to inform me about another feature of the villa that her in-laws planned to change, I had to bite my tongue and play along. What made this deception bearable was the support network I rediscovered. Old friends who had been told I was confused sought me out directly and were appalled by what was happening. My teaching colleagues rallied around me. Even former students, now adults with families of their own, offered help when they heard rumors of my situation. Through this ordeal, I found strength I didn't know I possessed. The woman who had always sought to avoid conflict, who had prioritized harmony over her own needs, was discovering her voice. And that voice was preparing to roar. Moving day arrived with perfect early summer weather. Sunshine sparkled on the lake as birds sang in the gardens I had tended for 3 decades. The beauty of the day stood in stark contrast to the ugliness of what was about to unfold. Following Frank's strategy, I had packed several suitcases and boxes, just enough to make it appear I was complying with the eviction. These sat by the front door, lending credibility to my supposed surrender. In reality, I had no intention of leaving my home. Audrey had informed me that her in-laws would arrive at 11 to help me transition to my new accommodation at Sunny Pines Assisted Living. What she didn't know was that I had canceled the reservation at that facility weeks ago. At 10:30, Frank arrived with his legal team and parked their cars down the street out of sight. Judge Martha Wilson had also quietly arranged for Sheriff Danielson and 2 deputies to be available on standby with all necessary legal papers prepared. "Are you ready, Pamela?" Frank asked gently. "This will be difficult. Confronting family in this way is never easy." I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm. "I've been a doormat my entire life, Frank. I've given everything to others, especially Audrey. Today, I stand up for myself." At precisely 11, a caravan of vehicles turned into my driveway. Not just Audrey and Jackson with his parents, but a small moving truck and 3 additional cars carrying various members of Jackson's extended family. They were treating this like a celebration, a family occasion to witness Gerald and Diana claiming their new lakefront property. I watched through the window as they unloaded champagne and what appeared to be a picnic lunch. Audrey was directing traffic, pointing to where cars should park to leave room for the moving van. Jackson was giving his cousins a tour of the grounds, gesturing toward the dock and gardens as if he were the proud owner. Taking a deep breath, I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. Immediately, all eyes turned to me. "Mom," Audrey called with false brightness. "You're all ready to go. That's great. Let me help with your bags." "Actually, I replied calmly. "There's been a change of plans. Why don't you all come inside for a moment?" They followed me into the living room, Gerald and Diana exchanging triumphant glances, clearly assuming I had fully accepted their takeover. Diana was already carrying fabric swatches for new curtains. "I've prepared some refreshments," I said, gesturing to the coffee and pastries I had arranged on the dining room table. "Please help yourselves." As they settled in, munching on blueberry muffins and commenting on what furniture they'd keep or discard, I excused myself to check on something in the kitchen. This was the signal Frank had been waiting for. The doorbell rang, and Audrey, assuming it was another family member, opened it without hesitation. Her face fell as Frank entered, followed by two associates carrying briefcases, Sheriff Danielson and his deputies. "What's going on?" Jackson demanded, jumping to his feet. "Who are these people?" Frank stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Good morning. I'm Franklin Daniels, attorney at law. I represent Mrs. Pamela Campbell, the legal owner of this property." The shock on their faces might have been comical under different circumstances. Gerald recovered first, his face flushing with anger. "This is ridiculous. We have paperwork showing the property has been transferred to us. Pamela agreed to everything." "I'm afraid that's incorrect," Frank replied, opening his briefcase and removing a stack of documents. "I have here the original deed to this property showing Mrs. Campbell as the sole owner. I also have documentation proving that the alleged transfer documents contain signatures that forensic analysis has determined to be forged or fraudulently obtained." Sheriff Danielson stepped forward. "I have a court order here preventing any transfer or alteration of this property, pending investigation into allegations of attempted fraud and elder abuse." The word elder abuse hit like a thunderclap. Audrey visibly flinched. "This is absurd," she sputtered. "My mother gave us this house. She signed the papers." "Under false pretenses," I said, finding my voice. "You told me I was signing updated will documents, Audrey. You lied to me, just like you've been lying to our friends and family about my mental state." Frank's associate laid out more evidence. "We have recorded conversations where the intent to defraud Ms. Campbell is explicitly discussed. We have bank records showing unauthorized access attempts to her accounts. We have witness statements from multiple sources confirming a pattern of behavior consistent with financial exploitation." Gerald turned on Jackson, his face purple with rage. "You said this was handled. You said the papers were ironclad." Jackson backed away, hands raised defensively. "They were. The lawyer said there was no way she could contest it if we established a pattern of cognitive decline." That admission, spoken in panic, was perhaps the most damning of all. It confirmed the calculated nature of their scheme. Diana began to cry, not from remorse, but from the realization that their plan was collapsing. "What about our retirement? We sold our house. The buyers take possession next week." I felt a momentary pang of sympathy, quickly replaced by righteous anger as I remembered how they had measured for new curtains while discussing my removal as if I were a piece of unwanted furniture. "Perhaps you should have thought of that before attempting to steal my home," I said quietly. The sheriff cleared his throat. "I need all of you to vacate these premises immediately. This court order prohibits you from entering this property without Mrs. Campbell's express permission, which I gather is not forthcoming." "You can't do this," Audrey cried, turning to me with tears streaming down her face. Whether they were tears of remorse or frustration at being caught, I couldn't tell. "Mom, please, where are we supposed to go?" The question was so similar to what I had asked her when she told me I had 30 days to leave my own home that I almost laughed at the irony. "That's not my concern, Audrey. Just as my welfare wasn't yours when you planned to ship me off to a budget nursing home while you gave away my home to people who see it as nothing more than a financial asset." Gerald was frantically flipping through the court documents looking for any loophole. Finding none, he turned his anger on Jackson. "This is all your fault. First the casino fiasco, now this. You've ruined us." The facade of wealth and success the Harringtons had maintained was crumbling before my eyes. Jackson's gambling debts, failed investments, and now this attempted property theft were apparently the latest in a series of financial disasters. As the sheriff began escorting them out, I stepped forward one last time, needing to say something to my daughter. "Audrey, I want you to know that this breaks my heart. Not just your betrayal, but what it reveals about how little you valued our relationship, my sacrifices for you. I hope someday you'll understand what you've thrown away. Not just a lakefront property, but a mother's love." Her expression flickered between anger, shame, and desperation. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, might show some glimmer of the daughter I had raised. Instead, she turned and walked out without another word. Sheriff Danielson supervised as Jackson's extended family packed up their picnic and champagne, their celebration transformed into a retreat. The moving truck departed, empty, its services no longer required. As the last car pulled out of my driveway, Frank placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Pamela. Your home is secure." I looked around at the villa that had almost been stolen from me, feeling not triumph, but a profound sadness mixed with relief. "Yes," I agreed quietly. "But at what cost?" The victory felt hollow, knowing I had lost something far more precious than property. The daughter I thought I knew. After the dramatic confrontation, I found myself alone in the villa that had almost been taken from me. The house felt different somehow, both a sanctuary and a reminder of betrayal. That evening, I walked through each room, touching familiar objects, looking at family photos, and grappling with the decision of whether to remove Audrey's pictures from the walls. In the end, I left them up, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of the painful lesson I'd learned about trust and family. The girl in those photos, graduating from high school, blowing out birthday candles, learning to ride a bike, was someone I had loved unconditionally. The woman who had tried to take my home was someone I no longer recognized. The first few weeks were the hardest. I oscillated between devastating grief and burning anger. Some mornings I couldn't get out of bed, overwhelmed by the loss of the relationship I had valued above all others. Some nights I lay awake rewriting mental scripts of what I should have said or done differently over the years to prevent Audrey from becoming someone capable of such calculated cruelty. Frank, my attorney, helped me take necessary legal steps to protect myself going forward. We pressed charges against Jackson for the forgery and fraud, but I made the difficult decision not to include Audrey as a defendant. Not because I excused her actions, but because despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of my only child facing criminal charges. Jackson eventually accepted a plea deal that included restitution, community service, and probation. As for Gerald and Diana, their financial house of cards collapsed completely. Unable to move into my villa and having already sold their own home, they were forced to rent a small apartment while sorting out their finances. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they blamed Jackson entirely, barely acknowledging Audrey's role in the scheme. The renovation of the villa became my therapy. I hired contractors to redo the kitchen I had always wanted to update but couldn't afford while raising Audrey. I converted her old bedroom into a bright art studio where I rediscovered my love of watercolor painting. The master bathroom, which Diana had planned to claim, became a spa-like retreat with a soaking tub and heated floors. Small luxuries I had denied myself for decades while putting my daughter's needs first. Each change made the villa more distinctly mine, erasing painful associations and creating new positive memories. The garden, always my sanctuary, expanded as I channeled my emotions into nurturing plants, rather than people who didn't appreciate the care. Slowly, I rebuilt my social life. Many friends who had distanced themselves after hearing Audrey's lies about my mental state returned apologetic and supportive once they learned the truth. My teaching colleagues organized weekly dinner gatherings. Former students invited me to their children's school plays and graduations. Through these connections, I met Lily Chen, the daughter of my new neighbors. 34 and warm-hearted Lily had recently moved back to town to help her aging parents. We bonded over gardening initially, but soon found connections in our love of books, classical music, and volunteering. "You remind me of my grandmother," Lily told me one afternoon as we planted tulip bulbs. "She raised my dad alone after my grandfather died, working 3 jobs and never complaining. She had this strength that didn't announce itself but was always there when needed." The comparison touched me deeply. Strength had never been how I defined myself. I had always seen my acquiescence to others' needs as a virtue, rather than a weakness to be exploited. Now I was learning the difference between generosity and martyrdom, between compassion and being a doormat. About 6 months after the confrontation, Frank called with news that Jackson and Audrey were divorcing. Apparently, the failed villa scheme had been the final straw in a marriage already strained by financial troubles and family pressure. 2 weeks later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Audrey standing there, thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. "Mom," she said simply, her voice breaking on that single syllable. I didn't invite her in immediately. "Why are you here, Audrey?" "To apologize. To try to explain, though there's really no explanation that could justify what I did." Tears streamed down her face. "I've lost everything. Jackson, his family's support, our house that we couldn't afford without their help. But none of that matters compared to losing you." "Words are easy, Audrey. Trust is not. You didn't just try to take my home, you deliberately undermined my reputation." Told people I was cognitively impaired and treated me as an obstacle rather than your mother. She nodded, not defending herself. I know, there's nothing I can say to make that right. I got caught up in Jackson's family's values, where money and status meant everything. I started seeing you through their eyes instead of remembering who you really are and all you've done for me. We talked on the porch for over an hour. I didn't offer easy forgiveness, but I did eventually invite her inside. Our relationship would never be the same, but perhaps with time and effort on her part, we could build something new, something with better boundaries and genuine respect rather than exploitation. In the year that followed, I transformed completely. With Frank's help, I established a formal trust protecting the villa from any future attempts at appropriation. The legal structure ensured that my home would eventually be used to establish a foundation supporting single mothers pursuing education, creating a legacy beyond my lifetime. Through Judge Martha Wilson, I became involved with a senior advocacy center, sharing my story to help others recognize and avoid elder abuse. The painful experience that had nearly cost me my home became a powerful teaching tool, perhaps saving others from similar betrayals. I expanded my social circle, joining a book club, a gardening society, and even trying speed dating for seniors, which was more amusing than romantic, but expanded my horizons nonetheless. I traveled for the first time since Thomas died, visiting Judith in Arizona and taking a cruise I had always dreamed of but deferred while raising Audrey. Most meaningfully, I began using part of the villa as a temporary shelter for seniors in transition, people between homes recovering from hospital stays or escaping abusive family situations. The four-bedroom house that Jackson's parents had coveted now provided safety and dignity for vulnerable elders who had nowhere else to turn. Lily became a regular volunteer with this project, bringing her parents along to help with cooking and companionship. The intergenerational connections healed something in me that I hadn't even realized was broken. As for Audrey, our relationship remained complicated. I established clear boundaries about money and property, making it explicit that while I would always care for her, I would never again allow myself to be financially exploited. She attended therapy, worked to rebuild her life independently, and slowly earned back small measures of trust. The most profound lesson I learned through this painful journey was that family isn't just defined by blood. Family consists of the people who value you, respect your boundaries, and contribute positively to your life, rather than taking whatever they can get. I had spent decades believing that sacrificing everything for my daughter was the ultimate expression of love. Now I understood that true love requires mutual respect, something I had failed to teach Audrey by never demanding it for myself. Today, my villa remains my sanctuary, not just a house, but a symbol of my reclaimed independence and self-worth. The lake still sparkles in the morning sun. The gardens still bloom with each changing season. But now when I sit on my deck watching the sunset, I do so with a profound sense of peace that comes from knowing exactly who I am and what I deserve. The betrayal that could have destroyed me instead transformed me. In protecting my home, I discovered my voice, my boundaries, and my true worth. And that has made all the difference. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Please share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to hear more tales of resilience and renewal. Remember, it's never too late to value yourself and create boundaries, something I wish I'd learned decades earlier. Thank you for listening, and I hope my journey brings you courage for whatever challenges you're facing.